Please join me in welcoming Dr. Jim Blake for his opening remarks and introduction of the government keynote speaker.
Well, good morning, ladies and gentlemen, DoD and congressional officials, representatives from U.S. coalition nations, industry members, and academic partners. And a very good morning to the soldiers, sailors, airmen, Marines, and Coast Guardsmen. It's truly an honor for me to stand before you today representing the United States Army as the ITSEC Lead Service Executive. Allow me to begin by pointing out the obvious. Training makes a difference. Our troops represent the world's best fighting force, largely because they're the best trained. Today's combat soldier trains for a myriad of scenarios on a number of mediums in a host of training environments. In fact, let me share a recent story with you. In September, Kansas City's 418th Civil Affairs Battalion learned at the last minute that they would not receive the range ammunition for their upcoming battle assembly. After a brief, "what do we do now?" panic, the battalion commander turned to the Engagement Skills Trainer 2000 to keep from canceling the scheduled weapons qualification. Thanks to the training the EST 2000 provided, 90% of the soldiers qualified on the M16 rifle that day. And in addition to the marksmanship training, the simulator allowed them to rehearse a number of civil affairs operations, to include dealing with angry villagers and preparing for hostage situations, both of which are situations they may soon be facing in theater. This brings me to point out a very interesting circumstance occurring in our armed forces today. After more than 10 years in a sustained and persistent conflict, our troops are not only highly trained, but they're also combat seasoned. We in the simulation training and testing community have a tremendous challenge before us. How do we maintain a high op-tempo in training to keep the interest of a combat seasoned soldier? How do we expand training availability as thousands of soldiers return to home station for good? And mostly, how do we execute this within the constrained fiscal environment? At my organization, the Army's Program Executive Office for Simulation Training and Instrumentation, we've been preparing for this state for quite some time. In fact, the Army will receive its first blended training environment next summer, where the commander will then have the ability to build a training scenario in which live, virtual, constructive, and game-based training can be seamlessly integrated. PEO Stride will provide commanders with a toolkit of training capabilities and the means to integrate the 4 facets of training. Commanders will have the flexibility to easily create a host of training exercises related to the contemporary operating environment. Soldiers will get a more wholesome training experience, whether they're the live guys on the range, the virtual guys in the aviation simulator, the constructive guys behind one SAF, or the gamers in a convoy. This extraordinary undertaking is one way our Army is preparing our soldiers for unified land operations. In today's environment, we're acutely aware that the force must be ready to not only destroy and defeat, but also to build, govern, and secure. It must be ready for decisive action at a moment's notice and properly balance combined arms maneuver and wide area security, both of which are an essential component of the joint forces' ability to achieve strategic goals. We recognize the importance of maintaining an agile force equipped to respond to offensive, defensive, and stability operations or defense support of civil authorities. It's our responsibility in the simulation and training industry to provide the systems and support necessary to raise adaptive combat warriors qualified to fulfill our nation's defense priorities. As the Army leads the way for ITSEC 2011, the conference motto, "Prepare the Force, Secure the Future," is not only a catchphrase, but it's also something that we live each and every day, in every way, in everything we do. I am sure the same holds true for both our sister services and our allied forces. Mirroring our contemporary operating environment, ITSEC attendees will find many examples of preparing the force for threats across the full spectrum of conflicts. In fact, the majority of the exhibit floor and booths, our special events, were fashioned with this concept in mind. Ladies and gentlemen, at this time, I'd like to unveil the ITSEC 2011 theme video. Please roll the tape.